Hi guys, this is a short video that I created to give you some tips to help write essays in a timed setting. It's based on the WPT, so it assumes that you have 2 hours to write your essay. If you have more or less time, you'll want to adjust accordingly. In the WPT, you have to read the article, do your pre-writing, write the actual essay, and then leave some time for editing and proofreading. Assuming that the article is 2 to 3 pages, I suggest you spend maybe 5 minutes or a little bit longer, but not too much reading. Then you want to spend 10 to 15 minutes pre-writing, 90 minutes on your writing, and then another 10 minutes on editing and proofreading. The total time is 120 minutes or 2 hours. Okay, with the pre-writing, you want to start by giving your gut reaction to the question. Then list as many reasons as you can think of to support that. They can be reasons from the article, or they can be reasons from your own head. Then you want to think about the other side of the issue and list as many reasons as you can for the opposition's argument. Take a look at your lists. Whichever one is longer is the one you want to use, even if you don't necessarily agree with that argument. You want to go with what you have more information for, regardless of your own feelings. Once you've decided which side of the argument you want, organize the supporting points that you've listed. You want to group the ones that are similar together. You want to put them in order of least important to most important or weakest to strongest. Always go from least to most, not the other way around. You want to end on a high note and leave your reader with a lasting impression of a strong argument. If you have more than 3 reasons on your list, choose the 2 to 4 strongest points and take the rest out. The next step is the actual writing of the essay. I give a suggested breakdown of the time, how long you should spend on each paragraph. You should spend about 10 minutes on your introduction and another 10 minutes on your conclusion, which leaves you 70 minutes for the body. If you're doing a typical 5-paragraph essay, that would mean 3 body paragraphs at about 23 minutes per body paragraph. If you have more than that, like 4, then it's 17 or 17 and a half minutes per paragraph. To make sure you stay within the time limit, you want to stick to that timing that I just outlined. That means literally writing down at what time you should be at each point in your essay. Take a minute at the beginning before you even read the article to write down at what time you should be at each stage. If you start the essay at 7 o'clock, you should finish your pre-writing by 7:20, assuming that you take some time in there to actually read the article and then 10 to 15 minutes to pre-write. You should finish your introduction by 7:30. You should finish your first body paragraph around 7:50, your second around 8:10, your third by 8:30, and the fourth, if you have a fourth, by 8:50, which leaves you another 10 minutes to proofread at the end. Make sure you stick to those time limits that you set. That means even if you're not done with a paragraph, if you hit the time that you're supposed to move on, skip some space and move on to the next paragraph. You'll find that it gets easier and faster as you go, so when you have a few extra minutes left in a later paragraph, you can go back and finish the earlier paragraph. It's better to have an essay that has shorter paragraphs that address all the points you say you're going to address than to have one really well-developed paragraph and then have everything else sort of peter out later because you ran out of time. Also, make sure you stick to your pre-writing. Even if, as you're writing, you get some sort of flash of genius, ignore it, put it to the side. If you did not think of it while you were doing your planning, it doesn't exist. Don't add it later. All that will do is derail your essay. It'll look like you're going off topic. Last-minute changes are never a benefit. I think I've said this in class before, but introductions are notoriously difficult. If you're one of those people who has problems writing introductory paragraphs, go ahead and skip it. Jot down your thesis statement so that you know what your argument is, and leave a bunch of space, even a whole page if you have to. You can always come back to it at the end when you've left yourself some time to write it, and then it'll be a lot easier to write. Editing and proofreading is so important. Do not skip this step in your essay. Again, it's better to have an essay that's a little bit less developed but carefully proofread than to have one that is long and full with a lot of mistakes in it. When you do your proofreading, you're going to end up reading through the essay at least 4 times. I know that seems like a lot, but trust me, I'm going to walk you through it right now. On the first read through, you're just reading through to check for any major issues, like making sure you have your thesis statement, making sure that every idea that you set up in the introduction is actually present in the essay, making sure that you follow the organization you set up in your introduction. So if you have 4 reasons, A, B, C, and D, you want to make sure that you go through those reasons in the same order, A, B, C, and D, that you set up in your introductory paragraph. If you have it swapped around, you either need to reorganize the ideas as they're presented in the introduction so that they match what's going on in the body of the essay, or reorganize the body to make sure it matches the introduction. The former is probably the easier, so that's what I would recommend. On this first read through, you can read through it pretty quickly, just skimming through and make sure that all of the major things are in place, that you have everything you need. The second and maybe the third and fourth read through, you're going to read through the essay looking for mistakes that are common to you and your writing. This requires you to know what kind of errors you tend to make. You want to focus on one or two of the mistakes at a time. So if you know you have a problem with run-on sentences, sentence fragments, and commas, then you're going to read through the essay once looking just for run-on sentences and comma errors. Then you'll go back and read through it again looking just for the sentence fragments. If you try to look for everything at once, you're much more likely to miss something. I know it seems like it takes a lot of time, but it actually is much faster this way and much more effective. On the next read through, you're going to read the essay backwards, last sentence to first sentence. So that means you go to the end of the essay, you read the last sentence. Then you go up and you read the sentence before it. Then you go up and you read the sentence before that. So you're not doing it word for word backwards. So for example, if I were going to read this slide backwards, I would say it's a really great proofreading tool. Reading backwards helps you catch sentence level errors, minor grammar mistakes, etc. The reason that I suggest that you do this is because we tend to read what we meant to write instead of what we actually wrote when we read. It's common, especially in our own writing, but we actually do it all the time. When you read through an essay backwards by sentence, you don't have that same flow. It doesn't make sense, so you don't get caught up in what you're trying to say. Instead, you have to look at it at a sentence by sentence level. It also helps if you know you have a tendency for run-ons and fragments, because you'll see sentences that are really, really long, and you can look and see if it's a run-on sentence. You'll also see sentences that are really short or that don't quite make sense all by themselves, which might mean that they're sentence fragments. I guarantee you'll find at least one mistake by reading backwards. Then you just read through it one more time from the beginning to end, this time with all of the changes in there to make sure that it still makes sense, that you didn't fix something and overcorrect or leave something out in the correction. You want to make sure that the essay flows well, that you like the way it sounds. Then you can put in any finishing touches if you have them. If you have transition words missing, or if you want to add a final thought or something like that. And now I just have some final hints for you to help you. The first hint is that it's okay for the essay to be a little bit messy. It's a rough draft and it's handwritten, which is not ideal. The reader knows that. I know that, or if it's the final exam, whoever's reading it knows that. They know that it's a polished first draft, that you're writing by hand, and that you have a time limit. You're not going to have time to write a whole draft and then copy it all over again to make it neat and perfect. You want to make your corrections as neat as possible and use whiteout or draw just a single line through and put the correction above it. But if it's messy, if you have to number your paragraphs, if you do have crossouts, that's not the end of the world, and you're certainly not going to be penalized. Also, you want to make sure it's clear exactly where one paragraph ends and the next begins. Do your best to remember to indent your paragraphs and indent them far enough, again, that it's clear that this is a new paragraph. If you forget to indent, then go back at the end and number your paragraphs or draw a line, a slash, something so that it's clear that you don't have just one huge long paragraph and that you have actually an introduction, a couple of body paragraphs, and a conclusion paragraph, each by themselves. We need to know as a reader that you know how to do your paragraphing. So it's really important, and it's something that people forget when they're in a hurry. You might also want to consider double spacing by skipping a line on the paper. It makes it easier. It makes it easier to make corrections, and it's a lot neater. It just makes your life easier when you're doing the proofreading. It also, if you decide when you're reading through something that you want to add a sentence or two, it leaves you a little space to do that. One thing that I've seen that's really clever that students do is they go through at the beginning and put an X at the beginning of every other line, and that serves as a little reminder to help you remember to double space, because a lot of times what happens is we start out double spacing, and then as we get going and we get wrapped up in it, we forget. And then my last hint is just that you need to trust yourself. Don't panic. Even if the topic seems weird or scary, take a deep breath, trust yourself, do your best to come up with support for an argument. It doesn't have to be awesome support. We know, again, that it's a time situation. Just do the best that you can and trust that you know what you're doing. You do. That's it. I hope you found this video helpful. Good luck on your exam.